Hey guys, it's Snailbiter, and I'm doing another World of Tanks video here. And this is a round that I got a couple weeks ago with the KV-4, which is a Tier 8 Russian heavy tank. And the only reason I really wanted to show this round was actually because I think I end up getting something like, I get a steel wall, and I don't just get a steel wall, I get I think 38 hits received, which seemed pretty high. I mean, I'm sure people or somebody has gotten higher than that. I'm positive actually that that's not the highest number of hits received in a game that anybody's ever had, but I thought it was pretty good. And the game itself was decent as well. I think I ended up with around 1100 experience, which is pretty good. And I decided I wanted to do a commentary as well, just about the KV-4 in general. Partially because I think you don't really see that many of these tanks in game very often, even though the KV-4 was added originally, I think in the 7.2 patch, I want to say, when Wargaming added a second Russian heavy line to the tech tree, and it's you still don't really see very much of it, even though this was released probably at least 6 months ago now, I want to say. And I think part of the reason for that is that a lot of the people who are going to be going up, one of the Russian heavy lines, would probably pick the IS line over the, I guess I'm going to call it the IS line and the KV line. But people would probably pick the IS line because I think those tanks are just more popular. And generally, I think people say that the IS-7 is a better Tier 10 heavy tank than the IS-4. And the other reason I think is also that because the IS-4 was the original Tier 9 heavy tank, or in that original Russian heavy line, it was the Tier 9 heavy tank there, and it got moved over to the Tier 10 heavy tank in the new line. A lot of people already had the Tier 10 heavy tank in that new line and didn't really see any need to go back up the line again. So, I think that's probably part of the reason you don't see too many of these tanks out in any random battles. And anyway, so I'm going here. This is around on El Haloof, as you can obviously tell, and I was kind of being a little over-aggressive here, on sort of in this A1, A2 area, which is a pretty typical area for a heavy tank to go. And being a Russian heavy tank, the gun depression is really bad on this tank, so I have to kind of stick myself out pretty far in order to get a shot on anything that's down here. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff spotted, so it's kind of stupid of me to do, but a lot of the stuff shooting at me is pretty low tier. It's a couple of tier 6s, and then in the back there I think there's a super Pershing. And none of those guys can really pen me from the front, especially if I'm angled. And I also was getting kind of annoyed by this T-34 that's right next to me that kept kind of running into me from behind and preventing me from actually backing up when I wanted to. And so I ended up staying out there a lot longer than I wanted to, but as you can see, I still actually haven't taken any hit points and damage. And I got an awful lot of bounces just right there. So anyway, I think the KV-4 in its characteristics is probably most similar to the Tiger II. It's a pretty big tank. It's actually probably bigger, and I'd say it's a little bulkier than the Tiger II is. But it's got pretty decent armor, and its gun is about the same actually as the Tiger II's gun. It's got slightly better penetration. I think it's some weird number like 227 penetration, and the damage is the same at 320. And the Tiger II's gun I think is 220 pen and 320 damage, so almost identical. But I actually think the Tiger II is a much better tank than this. And this Top Gun, this long 107, which I actually just got I think right before I got this round. I actually was thinking it was going to be a lot better, but part of the reason I don't like the long 107 as much as I thought I would is because it has a really long aim time, and I was expecting it to be more like the Tiger II, where the Tiger II has a really good aim time. It's a sniping tank pretty much, and that's a little more of what I was expecting out of this tank, because I think the problem that I have with the KV-4 is, first of all, it's really slow. It's just about, the same speed as the Tiger II, so it's tough to really maneuver anywhere. And it's a pretty bulky tank. It's pretty big. It doesn't have very good traverse either, so not very maneuverable. Its armor is good, but I think honestly that's probably the only upside to this tank. I was hoping this gun would have a better aim time, because that would make it a little bit more of a sniper tank. But the problem with the aim time means that it's kind of hard to really do that sniping. You can sit back in one place, but then you're not really using your armor, in the way that it can be effective. And the problem with the 122 is that you can't really pen anything from the front, and the tank is too slow to really flank. So, you know, the problem in the long 107, it has a pretty low damage compared to the 102. And you know, I mean, if you look at the IS-3, which is the other tier 8 Russian heavy from the other line, the damage on the BL-9, which is the gun that the top gun that the IS-3 gets, is much better than the damage on this tank. So it's I mean, it does have good armor, but that's really only for, I'd say, you know, tanks of the same tier or the lower tier. And you know, even most tanks in your tier, if they know where to shoot, are going to be able to pen you. And so that armor doesn't really do you that much good. You can be a little bit, maybe a little more aggressive, I guess, than I mean, you will get bounces, so you can be a little more aggressive with this tank, but I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's armor, and you know, obviously, if you're up against tier 9s and tier 10s, they're gonna have no problem penning you for the most part. You know, I have bounced like Jagdtiger shots before, but you know, again, you can't consistently really rely on that. So I think I mean, this tank it's not bad, I think, but it's definitely not one of my favorites. I prefer the Tiger II, definitely. Because I think the Tiger II is, first of all, a little more maneuverable, and its gun, the aim time in the gun makes it a lot better. I think, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to pick out weak spots, whereas, you know, with this tank, you really have to sit still. I think the aim time is nearly 3.5 seconds, and so you have to really sit still for a good amount of time before you can really aim in. And then, I mean, those tracks are so big that you get tracked an awful lot, so it's really important that you run this tank with a repair kit, so you don't, I mean, you know, I got kind of lucky there when I was sitting out in the open for a while and nothing was actually doing damage. And you know, I mean, that's even with, I think the crew repair skill is pretty high. I want to say it's like 70 or 80%, not quite at 100. But it's not a good idea to really, you know, sit out there and just, you know, let people, I mean, obviously with any tank, but just because this tank is so slow and not very maneuverable, it's important. And here I'm going to just speed this up a little bit, because at this point I'm almost down to I think around 150 hit points, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to get sniped by one of their remaining guys just camping in the back. So anyway, I mean, as you can see from this round, the KV-4 can take a few hits, and it'll definitely bounce a lot of low tier shots. You know, I know whenever I'm trying to shoot at a KV-4, I typically have trouble penning one if I'm in like a tier 6 or tier 7 tank. It does have pretty good armor, and especially on its sides, you'll get a lot of shots that are kind of absorbed or just bounced by those tracks, you know, which are pretty large. The turret also has actually really good armor, and you'll see in this video I don't have the upgraded turret, and I was actually a little hesitant to get the upgraded turret just because from what I've seen of it, it actually has a really large sort of lump in the back. It's almost like a turret on top of another turret. So it has a really large, basically cupola on top of it, which seemed like a really big weak spot that would be easy for enemy tanks to shoot at. But, you know, I think it probably is worth it just because you do get the extra hit points. It does have slightly better armor on the sides and the back. I think the stock turret, I'm not exactly sure what the stock turret's armor is, but the upgraded turret has 180 armor in the front, and I think it's I want to say 150 and 130 on the sides or something like that. So it, you know, it's pretty good armor. Nothing compared to an American tank, but you know, 180 in the front is decent enough to bounce a lot of stuff, and it does improve your aim time slightly and your your reload speed a little bit. So that is an added benefit as well. But you know, I think overall the KV-4 is a pretty average tank. It's you know, the IS-3 is much better. It's nowhere near as good as the IS-3, and you know, personally I think nowhere near as fun as the IS-3. But it's not a bad tank, and I think from what I've heard, the ST-1, which is the tier 9 tank in this heavy line, is much better, because that tank gets I think it's like the 120. It gets the 122 that the IS-8 gets, which is a tier 10 gun, and it's actually the same gun the IS-4 gets. And so I think that's you know, a much better damage gun, and the ST-1 also has good armor still. So my guess is that'll be a tank that's a little more fun to play. But Anyway, that's my opinion of the KV-4. This round is just about over, and you'll see I ended up, I don't know how that shot missed, but, you know, whatever. So, as I said, about 1100 experience and 38 hits received, so that was pretty good. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.